guys! So in today's video, I'm going to be touching on something that I've discussed several times throughout the history of this channel, and that is my art journals. Now, even though I've talked about them a couple of different times, I've never actually given you guys a proper look inside of them. And so essentially that's what this video is intended to do. I'm going to be flipping through a couple of my more unfinished art journals. I don't really have a ton that are completely finished, and these ones have the most accurate representation of what my art looks like right now. And that's mostly what I wanted to share with you guys. So I hope you guys enjoy seeing this little peek inside my art journals, and I will see you there. So these are the two art journals that I'm planning on flipping through today. Neither one of these is completely finished, but I thought that it would be fun to kind of go over what I've done in the past so you can have some vague idea of what you might see from me in the future. Another thing that I want to mention is that both of these journals I actually made myself. This one on top was made using my binding tutorial that I have up on my other channel, and I just did it in a smaller size than that one. It's only a single signature, and it has cardboard covers that I have decorated, and it has copy paper on the inside. The one on the bottom was made using some bags that I had laying around, brown paper bags, and I had accidentally bought them in the wrong size. So I decided to make a little journal out of them. So without further ado, let's get into it. Something you will probably see throughout this journal especially is a little bit of a progression. I was not really trying to find my style, but I was just trying to figure things out, I guess. Here's a good example of a spread where one page might be a little more finished than the other page. This one, I think, probably only needs some sort of word on it, whereas this feels a little more unfinished. And really, this entire page was inspired by this little scrap of paper that I had. Here I did a little drawing and added some collage on top. Lots of layers in my artwork. I'm a really big fan of building up color and texture. Some stitching along the side here. This was really just a collage. This was a jelly print I had made at one point. And this is the type of thing that I do with my jelly prints more often than not. Here I added in a little envelope that I had, and I tucked a little drawing that I did. I thought it was cute to have just her eyes peeking out, and I decorated it as well. This page at one point I thought was finished, but I'm not so happy with it the longer it sits, so I may go back and add layers over the top of that. This also not quite complete. This was a digital stamp that I had printed out and colored, and it just has a lot of built up texture, but I'm not a big fan of it. I think that's the main reason this page isn't considered finished in my eyes. These were some blind-ish contour drawings that I did on a scrap of a jelly print, and I actually stapled that over the top of this other page, primarily because this is charcoal and I didn't want it to smudge everywhere. So it picks up on the back of this piece of paper, but not on the rest of the journal. This has a little flip-in tracing paper stamped image. There's a lot of texture in the background of this page. And really all that means is that it took a lot of layers to get it to a place I was happy with. Another page, this time using some bright neon colors that I am a pretty big fan of. Some eyes in the corner here that I eventually scanned in and became part of a collage sheet that I made. And this is some collage using some of my own images, some scraps of jelly prints, and then drawing over the top of it. And the thing you're not seeing is how thick these pages have become. This was initially copy paper, but I've put so many layers of acrylic paint over the top that they're very, very thick. This is a page I actually did fairly recently. I was having a lot of trouble with this background, So I just ended up cutting a stencil myself, and I also had a mask bit, so I just put it down, painted around it, and made the background part of a dress as opposed to a very busy background. This was a little card bit that I stuck in there. Here, for some reason, I decided that I wanted to put a photo in. I had just gotten my hair cut and I really liked it. And although I don't often put pictures in my art journals, it just sort of happened. This is kind of one of my favorite spreads in this journal, I think. This was a blind contour face that I then added onto and kind of expanded on it, and this was done using a dip pen. And I'm going to pull it up closer because this also has a lot of layers and texture you can't really see unless you're up close. And I added some little stitching here, which eventually was put underneath of this photo, so it's completely hidden on the other side. These were some copies of some illustrations that I did that I added some stems and leaves to, and another little doodle with a dip pen. And this is where we start to get into the more unfinished bit of this sketchbook, and that is these half-done pages where here was a sticker of mine, here was a piece of collage something or other that I stuck down and never really approached again. I like this page a lot. This has a little tipped in piece of copy paper that's hiding this girl and this image as well. I had a lot of fun with trying to figure out what image I wanted to put in place of the head here. And I have this little bracket here also. I'm assuming I'm gonna put a word of some kind here, but I haven't gotten to it yet. And that's very much what I mean by these journals being in various stages of completion. Like, this page is probably almost done, but until I have a title there, I'm not gonna call it. And that will basically just happen when it feels right. Another unfinished page with a sticker of mine, a little bit that used to be on a tea bag, and some neon colors in the background. This is a pretty layered up page that has some paint and collage in the background, and then some stenciled circles over the top. And this piece of collage in the background, I don't know if you can quite see, but it's actually this page that I scanned in and then cut apart to incorporate here. I would say that this page is pretty close to being done. It just needs some kind of focal image. This page is probably done, and this just has a little bit of collage, a little girl that I had drawn on a separate scrap of paper and ended up gluing down, and I actually wrote some journaling this time. So this was a tissue paper that I had bought from Target. It was on clearance, and I really like incorporating tissue paper into my backgrounds. This is actually a tea bag thing that I stapled in, and some of you might have seen on my traveler's notebook, I actually have attached one of those along with one of the keys that I showed off in my haul video. And that's just because I really like the way that it looks. I like that it's black and simple, and I just wanted to incorporate it. So those often make their way into my art journals and things like that. I actually have one in my scrap box as well. I'm sure I'll find a place to incorporate that. This was the original of a illustration that eventually became a sticker in my Etsy shop. One of my favorite stickers, actually. It's another sticker. Again, very unfinished basic layers. Even more basic layers. There's some more. This one actually has a piece of collage instead of just some paint layers. And on the back cover, I taped in this hand wrapping guide that I had printed out as part of a aesthetics test kind of thing that I was doing for a potential graphic novel, and I didn't end up using that in my mood board, so I glued it into my journal. So that's what that one looks like. I'm really interested in seeing how much longer it takes to fill it up, because so many of the pages are finished or very close to being finished. So there's that one. Now this one is different because it's larger in size. I think probably twice the size, but it's also shorter. There's not as many pages. So this will probably be a fairly quick flip through. Here on the cover, I printed out a color palette that I was using for this YouTube channel, actually. I was kind of figuring out branding things, so I came up with a color palette and glued that onto the cover. And I haven't decorated this very much, except for that, but it has picked up little bits and pieces of acrylic paint as I've been working with it, which I actually kind of like. So opening to the very first page, it's gonna stick. This is actually one of the most unfinished spreads in the journal. I don't really like this at all. It's in its very base layers, but I just painted over it. Basically, it had a ton more layers under it, and I just really didn't like it, so I painted over and restarted, and I still don't like it. So we'll get there eventually. Now this page I do like, and this spread I would probably call done until something happens that makes me change my mind. But it just has a lot of depth to it that I really like. It has this face in the background, which is blending in. I really like the colors and how everything really blends into one another. Down here it says creativity takes courage. This is one of the Tim Holtz word stickers. I can't remember what the pack is called, but they're Tim Holtz. And this illustration, which also became part of my collage sheet. Speaking of the collage sheet, stay tuned because there will be a video on that at some point in the future. Turning to the next page, another very base layer type of page. This piece of collage that I found when I was just cleaning my room and digging through things, and I found this. And a bunch of acrylic paint layers. A little bit of stenciling, a little bit of just splashing things around with a brush. More paint. This was actually some oil pastel that I drew on there with and smudged around. Some stenciling, a giant piece of collage, and this needs some sort of focal image, but I'm just kind of letting it evolve naturally. Now this is probably my favorite spread in this journal. This will make an appearance in a future video, and basically I just was doing a lot of experimenting and playing around, and I ended up with this girl with this really patterned skirt, and I don't do things like that very often, so I was really, really happy about that. And this page, this spread, is actually something that was in my journal for a very long time before I added this. Basically, neither of these things were here, and it was just the rest of it. It was the background, this piece of collage, and this little image down here. And it was just sitting there, and eventually everything sort of came together and created this page. And I think that's really what I like about working out of order in my art journals, is you never know when everything's going to fall into place, but it's usually very satisfying when it does. This is another page that I'm very happy with. And as you can see, I was trying to do a little bit of storytelling here, which is something I love to do in my artwork. And essentially, if you will remember, in this art journal, we had this girl, and I loved her so much that I scanned her, printed her out, cut her out, and then incorporated her here. However, I wanted to give her a more full skirt, so I did. I wouldn't say that this spread is quite finished yet. I think it needs a little bit more contrast, especially up in these areas. And I want to pop this little owl guy out but I'm still very happy with where it's at right now. Here's a page that I want to like more than I do. I had some little collage bits over here, some collage bits over here, and this little tip-in. And I like this little area. I like little bits and pieces of all of this, but I think it definitely needs a lot of work. And as you can see, I have some stitching that's kind of coming through. This is the back side, but I do like the way that that adds some texture and interest. This is another spread that I'm very happy with, and I would say it's more on the finished side. I like the way that the gessoed background is showing through over here, and I didn't completely paint it over. This was done with oil pastels. There's some washi tape in the background here that's been painted over and kind of embedded in. There's the stitching that was showing through on the other side. And if you angle it right, let's see if I can get it, there's actually a metallic gold splatter effect on this page. This is also one of the stickers that are available in my Etsy shop. This was a page that I kind of had going for a while, and I decided to do something with it, and I'm not sure if I like it. So basically I had this texture paste in the background, and the background was gessoed, and I went over it with watercolors, and I really liked it, and then I added this face. I don't know if I like it or not, or if I'm going to eventually cover it up, but it's there right now. This is another time when I made use of my mask. It's actually right here. And I just like that it allows me to change the entire look and feel of a piece. This is something that I actually did on stream, and I'm not super thrilled with it, but I don't hate it. So I'm not sure where this is going to go. But what did happen is I ended up scanning it into my computer, putting it onto our shared iPad, drawing over the top of it, and coming out with this image, which I do like a lot. So as you can see, it's the same image, but this one is just more refined and has more detail that isn't so muddied with the way that the paints and the pastels looked on the original. And this is the last spread of this art journal, and really it just came into being because I had this little deer image that I had torn from a magazine, and I wanted to incorporate it into a page. So I glued it down, added the dark blue background, and then stenciled over the top of it with white. And then I was looking through some of my collage bits, and I had these clock faces that were from some collage sheet I printed off years ago. And they just fit really well color-wise, and I thought it would be a good addition. So I hope you guys enjoyed that flip through. I know I'm definitely a little all over the place when it comes to my artwork, but I find that it's what works best for me, and I think it's beneficial to share that process with you guys so you don't feel quite so bad about doing it yourself. So thank you all so much for watching. You can subscribe if you want to see more videos like this or very different from this in the future. And I will see you guys next time. Bye. As always, I've come into this completely unprepared. I've been trying to mess around with the lighting. I think it's working a little better. Also, I apologize if I kind of look like I have two black eyes, because I've been experimenting with liquid eyeliner as opposed to pencil/crayon eyeliner, and it definitely is a lot more difficult.